If fraud were a country, it would have the highest GDP growth in the world.
Leaders sometimes have to come forward and say, look, I'm not always right.
An impactful leader is one that makes a positive difference. Fraud doesn't just exploit weak controls, but it thrives in weak cultures.
One word for me, and that's accountability.
What do you think is one of the non-negotiable steps every board or CEO should be taking to shift from a culture of compliance to a culture of integrity and build real resilience?
Have an open door policy and actually listen to the people that come through the door. Don't get too overwhelmed with things. Let's just keep our eye on the ball and just keep advancing it a little bit more each day. But, you know, when you get up in the morning, just give it the best shot that you can and work as hard as you can that day. And then let's start over and just try again tomorrow.
Welcome to Impact Legacy with Rania, the podcast where we explore inspiring stories of leadership and success and uncover the lessons that shape influence, credibility, and lasting impact. I'm Rania. Each episode, I sit down with leaders, visionaries, and change makers, from audit and risk to CEOs, entrepreneurs to senior leaders across the globe, to explore how they built trust, created value, changed perception, and forged a legacy of impact. Before we begin, please hit subscribe or follow and click the bell. If today's conversation resonates, please like, comment, and share it with your network. Your voice matters as we grow this journey together. So let's begin. Hello, I'm Rania Bejjani. I'm a global governance, risk, and internal audit leader. After a long and rewarding career as Chief Audit and Risk Executive, where I transformed risk and audit into a great success, I now advise boards and C-suite, mentor governance, risk, and audit leaders, and train teams on strategy, design, and implementation to strengthen and modernize governance, risk, and internal audit, elevate performance and perceptions, and create value and trust. I also speak at international conferences and webinars. My work focuses on guiding current and future leaders to develop the strategic mindset, tech savviness, and the critical influence and impact skills to lead with confidence and courage. Through my advisory, mentoring, and training programs, I enable organizations worldwide to build resilience, and I empower governance, risk, and internal audit to become trusted strategic business partners, delivering greater impact. I created this podcast series to spark ideas and inspire leaders, from seasoned board members to rising talent, to infuse more authenticity, heart, and joy into leadership, and to create lasting success, impact, and legacy. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Impact Legacy with me, Rania. We have a remarkable leader joining us today, someone who's been fighting fraud for 30 years. He's a lawyer, author of the Definitive Fraud Examiner's Manual, and a global educator who personally developed the CFE exam review course in 2006 and has taught it since on every continent but Antarctica with great passion and purpose. After holding key roles as General Counsel and Chief Training Officer, he now leads the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, the ACFE, the world's anti-fraud organization, as its president, inspiring worldwide movement for integrity and accountability. Join me in welcoming John Gill. John, welcome to my podcast. Such a pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Wonderful to see you. I can't believe that, time has flown by. It's been almost a year since we were together in that conference in Dubai. So I understand you're going to go there this year.
Yes, we're having the Middle Eastern conference again the week of November 16th, which also, by the way, is International Fraud Awareness Week. There's a good plug for International Fraud Awareness Week. fraudweek.com is the URL that people can access, and it's just an opportunity for people to, in their organizations, find some time that week to educate employees about fraud.
Wonderful. And that's week starting the 16th of November.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Well, John, you've had a fantastic career, 30 years fighting against fraud. You've been almost everywhere in the world except Antarctica. So tell us a bit more about your career journey and your story in fighting for fraud.
Well, I don't.
Against fraud, against fraud.
Well, you do have to be careful sometimes. Like, well, I've been in fraud for over 30 years, and that does sound odd to some people. Like, well, it's on the fighting side, not the committing side. But
Yes.
I have been extremely lucky to have been with the ACFE now for 30 years. When I started, my hair was jet black. And so the miles have added a little gray to my hair, but it's never dulled my enthusiasm for the job and for all of the members. But I feel very privileged to have worked for the ACFE. But always, my role I've always looked at is really just a support function. When I first started, we were smaller. I was both the general counsel, because I was a lawyer, and I'd been in private practice doing consumer fraud and deceptive trade practices, and was working that angle. And then I started at the ACFE. And since I was a lawyer, like, hey, you can do all of our legal work for the association, but at the same time, I was an English major, I was a writer, and so I wrote content. I was the editor of the Fraud Examiner's Manual. I worked on the prep course, on the exam. I wrote questions and course material. Some of the self-study courses, the fraud trial was one, report writing manual, things like that I developed. But I always looked at my role as trying to help our members do their job better. And whether it was, just giving them information. And then over the years, I moved more just into content creation and then into teaching when we developed the CFE exam review course. And so once again, it really just looked at my role all these years is just trying to get people the information that they need to do their jobs better.
That's that's a journey of service. That's wonderful, wonderful. What a legacy. So you've investigated, you've written, you've taught, and now you're leading globally. From all these roles, from the examiner to the author to the president, which one is presented the greatest personal leadership challenge, and why?
Well, there's no doubt that the president role has been my greatest challenge. And I think it's similar to a lot of your listeners out there who are trying to balance like things with, doing a good job at work, but supporting your family. Well, to me, it's very similar because I have the global family of ACFE members, but at the same time, I have the inner family of ACFE employees. And so it's been very challenging because I feel like, well, when I'm on the road and I'm going to events, I'm talking to people, I'm fulfilling that, trying to help people do their job better and give them encouragement and talk to them and give them that support. But while I'm on the road, I'm not back in the office and able to give the support to the people there. So I always feel like I'm torn between somebody's not getting what they need, and that always makes me feel a little bad that when I'm on the road, I'm not concentrating on the ACFE employee side of leadership. But then when I'm in the office, then I think, well, I should be, at a conference or a seminar and talking to the members. So I always feel torn, but that's not unusual. I think that's true in a lot of positions, people working, with their teams. And each team is pulling at them, that are trying to get, attention. And so I think that's one of the challenges for leadership in is you always got multiple people wanting things from you, looking at you for direction. And the more you have, the more I always feel like, well, I'm not giving everybody my full attention. And I hate that.
I understand. And John, like, what has this experience taught you? And on reflection now, as you're doing this role, um, has any of your definition of leadership changed? Any aspects of your definition?
Well, yes, it has, because I really never thought of myself as a leader of the company for such a long time. I mean, I started there. There were very strong personalities already in leadership positions. There was Dr. Joseph Wells and Jim Ratliff, who were the two co-founders, and they were leading the organization. And I was just support. I was just helping them do their jobs better.
Right.
And as I got older and they took lesser role, I stepped in and started doing more of that. And then it was like one of those things, like one day I realized, well, wait a minute, the people are looking at me to do the leading.
Yes.
I was just used to doing the following. And that was, I'll have to say, a little bit of a transition. It wasn't something that, one day they said, well, now you're going to be a leader. It was a gradual process, because as I just naturally took on more roles and had more people reporting to me, and started to go be one of the senior people in the company, I realized, well, wait, now they're looking to me for that leadership that I got from Joe Wells and Jim Ratliff. And the first time that hit me, it scared me a little bit, because I thought Joe and Jim, were such great leaders. And I thought, well, I hope, I don't know if I'm up to the task. But I guess the secret was looking at what I thought Joe and Jim did so well, and just trying to do the same thing, which is just every day come in with this idea of, our members have a lot on their plate. Fighting fraud is rough.
It is.
It is a lot of work, and
Yes.
sometimes you want to give up. And we're trying to be a support network to provide you with the information, the resources, and the networking, so that you can do your job better. And so really that, I thought, if I can just come in every day and see, well, what can I do today to further that goal a little bit more, then that makes me feel good. And then the people under me within the organization, I think they've watched that and they follow that as an example. It's like, don't get too overwhelmed with things. Let's just keep our eye on the ball and just keep advancing it a little bit more each day. But, when you get up in the morning, just give it the best shot that you can and work as hard as you can that day. And then let's start over and just try again tomorrow.
Fantastic. So, John, you've been fighting fraud for decades, and we both know that fraud doesn't just exploit weak controls, but it also thrives in weak cultures. What do you think is one of the non-negotiable steps every board or CEO should be taking to shift from a culture of compliance to a culture of integrity and build real resilience?
That's a really good question. And, I have given this some thought, and I think it comes down to one word for me, and that's accountability. I think that's where we're missing. I think that's the missing piece in a lot of these cases that I see in a lot of organizations. We get in, you get in, some companies get into this mindset of, it's all about the bottom line. It's about how much money we make. It's what the share price is. And that's the wrong way to look at it. And if you follow that route, then you're going to, the end always justifies the means. But I think you need to, the good organizations look at what they're trying to accomplish, and everybody has a role within the organization, depending on whether it's the sales team or it's the procurement team or it's accounting or whatever it is. Each one has their role within the whole organization. If somebody messes up, they don't follow the rules, they're engaging in bad behavior, you have to hold them accountable for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of companies are willing to look the other way if they're high performers. And it could be fraud, but it could be small things. And I've seen this a lot when we did the comeback to work. And it's like, well, they'll say a company says you have to come back to work 5 days a week. But you have a high performer that's like, well, I don't want to work 5 days a week. I only want to work 2 from the office, and then I want to work the rest at home. Like, well, because they're bringing in a lot of money, they're doing high sales or whatever, like, well, that's fine. You don't have to follow the rules as long as, you show worth to the company. I'm like, well, that's where we start running into problems. You have to hold people accountable. If you have the rule that people have to come in and you're going to make exceptions, well, then that shows the employees that, well, if you're willing to make an exception for this rule, then what other rules are you willing to make exceptions for? So if you're going to have a policy, then you really do have to stick to it and you have to follow it. If you start sending the signal to people like, well, you can do whatever you want as long as we like you. And then management, sometimes it's the worst. It's like, well, yes, this is the rule for everybody else, but it's not for management. We have a different set of rules that we have to follow. And that just sets up problems from the very start. It's like, and it starts pervading into things like paying bribes. Like, well, technically, paying bribes to foreign government officials is illegal, but it's a bad time in the economy. We really need these contracts. Everybody else is doing it. So, it's really not that bad if we do it. It's like, well, employees see that, they follow it. The board sees management doing that and they do nothing about it. Everybody has to be held accountable. If the rule is bad, then change the rule. But if you thought through it and you came up with a rule and it says, here are the procedures, here's how we do business, here's our company gift policy, here's for what gifts employees can take. We don't pay bribes, we don't do grease payments, all of this stuff. If that's the policy, then you have to hold people accountable if they violate it. And if you let them slide by, then it's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope. So what I'm hearing is making sure that there is consistency in the way that rules are applied, that there are no double standards, and there are no exception to the rules, no matter what.
Absolutely.
To integrity rules, we're talking to integrity rules.
Integrity rules. But it also, it follows through on everything. It's I think management, a lot of the problem is they get into this idea of, well, the rules of the company are for the low level staff employees, the rank and file. We're management. We are allowed to follow a different set of rules, and that won't work.
Well, actually, that was going to be my next question. And the problem or trend I have seen in different organizations. Granted, some organizations were absolutely spot on integrity and consistency, and the boards were, had a very clear tone at the top. And in some other organizations where, for example, a senior executive who commits some sort of action is actually there is no consequence or is let go without any noise. And yet the repercussions, and that sends a message throughout the organization around what is, what is acceptable, what is not. Management and the board may get very tough on a low level employee, but the rules might be massaged when the person is higher up the rank. So what's your message to them, John?
Well, you said it before. I think it is consistency and accountability, but it has to be from the top down and throughout the organization. And there are a lot of examples of that. One is as you were asking the question that popped in my head. I did an interview with Mark Whitaker, who was Archer Daniels Midland fraud back in the late 90s, but it was still a great example of. I asked Mark, his fraud, there were two frauds that were going on with Mark at Archer Daniels Midland. It was a huge company. One was when he started, he was a biochemist. He had a PhD in biochemistry, and they liked him in so well that they promoted him to a vice president position. He was in management, and they came to him and they said, well, one of your jobs as a vice president is to engage in price fixing. You're going to meet with these companies. There were about 5 or 6 around the world, and you're going to decide how much we're going to charge for these chemicals that are used as food additives. And he said, well, isn't that illegal? Like, well, technically it is, but it brings in a lot of revenue. It only increases the product just a little bit, so don't worry about it. And so he was doing this for a long time, and eventually he did feel guilty, and he talked to the FBI about it. But what was strange about Mark's case is after they conducted the price fixing investigation, and Mark was a cooperating witness, he recorded conversations and meetings and all. They found out he had been stealing money from the company to almost $9 million. And I never understood, well, why would you be stealing money from the company at the same time you're being a cooperating witness in the government price fixing case? And when I did the interview with Mark, I finally had the chance to ask him. And he said, well, he was afraid he was going to be fired if they found out he was the whistleblower. And he was making a lot of money. And so he said, about 3 years before this, they had caught the outside auditors had caught the treasurer of the company stealing. He'd stolen about $3 million. But they didn't want any bad publicity. They didn't want anybody to know about it. So they fired the treasurer, but they let him keep the money that he stole. In addition to that, they let him keep his company benefits and the company car.
Oh, wow.
So Mark looked at that and realized, okay, well, if you're in management, they follow a different set of rules. If you're caught stealing, they'll fire you, but you get to keep what you've stolen, and they won't prosecute you. And so in that position, Mark was thinking, well, I'm just going to build up a nest egg of money. The worst that could happen is they get fired, but then I can live off the $8 or $9 million that I stole. And I thought that was very interesting concept that it really filtered out. And he said there were other executives, other vice presidents that were also stealing. They were also engaged in fraud because they had the idea that, well, management gets to follow a different set of rules. They might fire low-level employees if they violate the rules or they commit fraud or they steal, but as long as you're upper level, they're not going to prosecute. They're not going to do anything about it. And I thought that those are words to live by, and every organization should be looking is like, if you have 2 sets of rules, you're not somebody, you're going to have fraud, and it's going to be at the top. And in Report of the Nations, all of the surveys show, and it also is common sense, you lose more money. The frauds for people at the top cost a lot more than people at the bottom because they just have more access to funds. We have the problems of being able to bend or override controls. Yes. So you really have to look at the organization and realize, do we have consistency? Are we following the same rules for everybody, or do we let management follow one set of rules, but everybody else has to follow a different set?
So, yes, that's a powerful story, actually, John. Powerful story. And it goes to show once again the tone at the top, the culture of consequence. If there is no consequence for bad actions, there is, the we're giving permission for more.
Yes,
Um,
that's
and
a good way to
it
put
comes
it.
back to what you were saying about accountability, accountability, accountability.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you've said, I've heard you say before that uh, a good leader knows when to admit that they are wrong and when, and how their behavior may have led, their action or inaction may have led to fraud. Can you talk to us more about this and maybe give us a real life example where maybe a leader's refusal to acknowledge problems have led to fraud?
Yes, and one example that I want to share is I did an interview with Billy McFarland right after he got out of prison. And if you remember, Billy McFarland was the gentleman who was uh, over the Fire Festival fiasco, which there were several documentaries on it, but he
Hmm.
uh, came with this idea for the Fire Festival, which would be in an island in the Caribbean, and they would have these bands come in, and he was selling, all these packages for VIP
Hmm.
accommodations and food and all this kind of stuff. Well, it was a infamous disaster.
Hmm.
People had tents. There was no music. People were eating cheese sandwiches, and it was just
Hmm.
all over the papers. And he did go to jail for fraud. So when I did the interview with him, the first question everybody was asking me, well, was this a fraud from the start? Did he come up with this whole scam of, well, let's pretend to put on a music festival and we'll charge people for it, and then we'll just keep the money and run? And I did about a 2 hour interview with him, and I came away like, no, this was a problem of inexperienced leadership.
So incompetence. That was incompetence.
He was incompetent as to do this. But his story is very similar to Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, and I think Sam Bankman-Fried with FTX, and a lot of these young people. And I don't know that's always just, that's only generational. I think this has been going on for a long time, and there's been a lot of these in the news in the last few years where you have these young people that are just, they have this drive, they want to be entrepreneurs, and they have this idea, and they think that they are the smartest kids in the room.
Hmm.
And so Billy came with his idea to promote a music app by that was the Fire app, and he came up with the idea of promoting this music festival to sell the app. And he did an incredible marketing campaign. The problem is he didn't stop to realize you can't set up a music festival in 4 months. He came up with the idea in December and decided they were going to have this festival in April. And so they marketed it before they had a plan on how to put it on. And
Right.
that was the problem right there. And he had every intention, I believe, of putting on the festival,
Hmm.
but he was a victim of his own success. The farther he got into it, he realized, okay, this is much more complicated than I realized. They've got to find a location, they've got to get permits, they've got to book the acts, they've got to get in the equipment, the supplies, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so he told me during the interview, he said, if I had just stopped and said, okay, it was a good idea, but I don't have enough time to do this properly. So we're going to stop. I'll give everybody their money back. Give me some time to reorganize it, and then I will launch it again.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have worked. But he could not admit that he had made a mistake. And he kept thinking that if I just throw more money into it, that I can turn it around. And so that's when he flipped. He started doing the fraud, was to encourage investors and the public to buy these spend these outrageous sums for these yachts and mansions to rent that just weren't there. But he thought that if he could get enough money, he could he could make it happen. And he realized, right, no, just having more money is not going to solve some of these problems.
Yes.
But that's where, a good leader would have said, look, all of these people that are working on the festival are looking at me for guidance and for leadership. Rather than trying to fake my way through this and deceive them into thinking it can be done, he admitted, I should have just said, wait, my targets are too aggressive. We need to stop. We need to pause. We need to figure out how to do this properly and then come back. Leaders sometimes have to come forward and say, look, I'm not always right. And they're not. I've made plenty of mistakes in my career. I don't think you can exist in any career, in anything without making mistakes.
You're only human after all, right?
We're only human. And
Yeah.
so when you make a mistake, the smart leaders know I can't fool all these people. I just need to admit I made a mistake, accept that, and then let's move on and go forward.
In the corporate world, leaders who start with very good intentions, who set some targets, but then may not be able to do it, and then kind of cut corners or fudge corners, I should say, and do things that they shouldn't do to safeguard their image in terms of their ability to deliver this or that. So if we distill some of the nuggets of wisdom from what you just said, what would be your message to CEOs, board chairs, board members, to crystallize the lessons from the experiences of these cases you shared with us?
That's a very good question. And I would say, here's my advice, and that is have an open door policy and actually listen to the people that come through the door. In almost every case that I can think of, and people, the leaders were being told that they were off, that the targets were off, this idea was not a good one, and they refused to listen. Bill McFarland, people were coming to him and saying, look, this is not going to work. We can't do this festival. Somebody in management of Wells Fargo came with this idea that they wanted all of their account holders, all their customers should have at least 8 different Wells Fargo financial institution accounts. So Wells Fargo is a large financial institution in the U.S.
Yes.
The tellers and the account managers at the local branches went to management and said, this is a bad idea. We work with these people every day. They don't want 8 accounts. That's not a realistic goal. And they were fired. They were demoted. They were suffered adverse action. They didn't listen to what they were saying. Well, it turned out they were right. No one did want that, but the employees were pushed into such a corner that they started opening accounts without people's knowledge. They were faking accounts. It was just, a huge scandal. But they told them early on in the process, this is a bad idea. But management refused to listen or didn't listen. And so employees can be your best friend at alerting you to the problems, but you have the leadership in all of those cases made the fatal flaw of ignoring it or actually persecuting the people who were making the complaints. And that's about the worst leadership you can have.
Indeed. Do you think there is hope that there will be non-punitive whistleblowing? Do you think companies would succeed in creating that, or do you think it's human nature that when when there are high stakes and people think they might be impacted, that their first action would be to punish the whistleblower?
Unfortunately, history says that you're right. The first reaction is usually to quell this, to stop dissent. If you're either for us or against us, if you don't like our policies, then you're the enemy. We need to get rid of you. But I do have one idea on that. We had our ACFE Japan conference just a couple of weeks ago, and I was not aware of this till I was in Japan. They amended their whistleblower law, and it's now extremely good. And I think it is a model that a lot of countries should follow, because they have really cracked down on retaliation. And one of the things they did, I don't think I've ever seen before, which is if you lodge a whistleblower complaint, so you report some kind of wrongdoing on behalf of the company or leadership, anything like that.
Yes.
If any type of adverse employment action against you, so anything that they do, they demote you, they cut your salary, they fire you, they transfer you, anything that's bad that they do to that employee within the year after they're blowing the whistle is presumed to be retaliation. So when they go to court, there is a presumption that if they did anything bad to you, that was retaliation. And so the burden now is on the company to show that no, it was retaliation. We had a legitimate business reason to do that. That's a big turn of events in the legal system, because historically, even if something bad happens to the employee, the burden is on the employee to show that no, it was evil intent, it was retaliation. Well, that's very difficult to do if you're the employee, because you don't have, companies are very good about masking the way that they phrase things or say things or do things. But to flip that and put the burden on the employer to show that if you do anything bad to the employee when they blow the whistle, then the burden is going to be on you to prove that you had a legitimate means to do that. So I think that's how you're going to have to handle it, is you're going to have to put laws in place that hold these corporations accountable in the instances when employees come forward.
Let's hope that this example from Japan, creates ripple effects. Now, the fraud cases we've been talking about, John, have been, let's say, more analog. They down to a human being, either through incompetence or bad intention, committing some sort of action. But we live now in a space where the digital fraud is getting, supercharged. So I attended a recent risk and fraud summit in London, and my takeaway was this. If fraud were a country, it would have the highest GDP growth in the world. AI is putting fraud on steroids. And this is also backed up by your own ACFE's 2025 benchmarking report. It showed that 45% of respondents say that number of incidents have risen sharply in the last 12 months, and that 61% of respondents say they hardly recover anything of their losses. So what does today's landscape tell us about the state of the global fight against fraud right now?
Well, it is frightening, I'll have to say. Almost every event I go to, there is a session on cyber fraud, and no one comes away with a smile on their face. I feel, even talking to some of the speakers, there's like, it is a bit of a downer that you're always giving people such, bad news. But it what we're going to have to do is go back to some of the basics, which is we've gotten used to being able to trust what we see. And now, unfortunately, we're in a position where we're going to have to question everything. And I think
Would you
that's
actually
the
repeat
lesson.
that, John? Can you repeat that? Would you mind repeating that?
We're going to have to get into a mindset within organizations that we can't trust what we see, and we're going to have to question everything.
We can't trust what we see, and we have to question everything. That definitely resonates. Definitely resonates.
Because every one of these AI or these cyber fraud where they show you, two videos or two pictures, and they say, is this real or is this AI generated? The audiences are always wrong most of the time. Every
Wow.
once in a while, you've seen these presentations. Every once in a while, there'll be something that's really bad, but there's some of them that are so good. There's no,
Yes.
most of the audience thought it was real.
In the UK, for example, that's only quoting the UK. In the last few months, we've had a record number of cyber cases, from Marks and Spencer to the Co-op to Harrods to a nursery chain to obviously the big one, Jaguar Land Rover, and many, many, many others. And even on an individual level, my phone, I get so many dodgy messages, weird phone calls, that I've never had that kind of propensity and frequency before. So it is concerning, and certainly one has to be super vigilant. But when we bring back to businesses, where are you seeing the biggest acceleration, and what is what is one fraud trend or tactic that you see emerging globally that boards and executives and governance risk and audit, and fraud professionals listening to us should be watching out for?
Well, one of the for me personally, in looking at a lot of these different cases and a lot of the schemes and everything, I think here's what scares me the most. Some of them are really bad, and people get cocky because they're like, "Oh, I wouldn't fall for that because I'm able to spot one
Uh-huh.
of those, fake emails, fake scam, because some of them are horrible. I get them where it says, your Microsoft account has been suspended. You've gotten this bill from Amazon, and they look so amateurish. And I think that leads most people, including your employees, into some false security to think, well, yeah, other people fall for that, but I'm smart.
Right.
I won't do it.
It's a
I think
wake-up
that's
call
the
for me too, huh?
exactly. I think that's the wrong attitude because now I am at the point where I assume everything is a fraud and I'm trying to prove that it's not. So
It's
if somebody sends me something and says, "Here, you need to approve this," I'm immediately thinking, all right, this is probably a fraud. Let me see how I can verify where it came from. And it may be contacting the person, really paying close attention to where this comes from. Can I tell, can I go behind the scenes to look to see, is it a, different email address? Is there something about the way it was,
Yes.
worded? Anything that I can kind of pick up on. And unfortunately, we live in in an age where everyone wants everything done instantaneously, I think we're going to have to, in some instances, we're going to have to slow down, and we're going to have better procedures to double check things. Just sending somebody an email or even a video call. I was at a presentation a couple of months ago, and they were talking about some of these things are so hard to spot and whatever. What they went to is like something that's very old school, which was just a code word. Like the CEO and the CFO have a code word. So the CFO will not initiate any transactions, no matter what the phone call says, no matter what the video call says, no matter what, unless they have this particular code word. And I thought that's actually, it's kind of old school technology, but it works. It's like, well, that's the one thing that they're not going to know is if you have to have this code word or code phrase, and they don't say that within the and a lot of families are doing this because they have the same problem with now you can replicate someone's voice if you have any kind of clip from it. And of course, people are posting on Instagram and YouTube
We're posting this
clips all the
podcast series.
time. And so there's been an increase in like the grandparent scam where they're calling their grandparent and saying that they lost their wallet or they were robbed and they need money. And so families now are starting to do that where they're
Yes,
like, well, okay,
yes.
if you're my grandson and you say you need money, then you're going to know this particular code phrase.
Well, code phrases are probably a good thing, and it reinforces what I believe in is that yes, technology is evolving, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But really, the most important firewall is the human firewall. Well, John, that's really very insightful and practical. And in fact, I love this idea of a code, a code word because I believe that irrespective of how much technology is advancing, and it is advancing at rapid pace, and we're going to go into that. And if we actually look at a lot of the fraud cases, it is the human element that failed. It wasn't the technology. If we think about, for example, the Hong Kong story where, they faked this Zoom meeting and they convinced this person to wire, how much was it? It was crazy amount of money,
Yeah.
25 million or 2.5
Something like
million
that.
or
It was a
something,
large amount.
some crazy amount of money. I don't remember the exact figures. Or, for example, what happened in with M&S here. And I mean, it's always the human element that is filtering through. Talking of technology, so AI is obviously becoming the great, what do they call it? They have a funny word for it, the equalizer. It's democratizing fraud. And the fraud fraternity have their own ghost GPT and the fraud GPT. And, they are very much on fire with deep fakes and voice cloning and stealing and creating synthetic IDs and there's a lot more sophistication, which means the speed of committing fraud is faster, the scale is bigger, the cost is lower, and it's becoming so sophisticated that it's harder to detect and a lot more convincing. So when we think about this, and if we think about it like an arms race, where, from your experience and engagement with so many countries and corporates, where do you think corporate defenses are? Are they keeping pace or are they already behind?
Well, I've been, like I said, been at this for 30 years and technology, has grown. When I first started, there was no cyber fraud because only,
Sure.
computers couldn't talk to each other very well. And
Yeah.
as soon as that started to grow, well, now we had a new type of, technology that fraudsters were using, cell phones with new technology. Now we have AI. So unfortunately, I think the fact of the matter, the reality is the fraud fighters are always going to be playing catch up because the fraud perpetrators, that's their job. They spend all their time looking at ways to commit fraud. They come up with it. I don't think you're ever going to beat them at their own game. The best we can do is keep our eyes and ears open. As soon as we see something that's different, that's unusual, then we need to start thinking, okay, well, this could be a new way to commit fraud. What can we do to help stop it, prevent it? What kind of control can we put in place? So I think as far as getting in front of it, I don't think we're ever going to, I just don't think it works that way. I think we're always going to be playing catch up, but that's okay. I mean, that's kind of the way this works. That's why we have jobs, is we've got to be out there and we've got to be vigilant with it. But the technology that can be used to commit the fraud can also can give us ways to help catch it and prevent it. And again,
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, actually. How can AI be used now by businesses and individuals to defend themselves against the rise of digital and cybercrime through AI?
Well, we talked about, checking everything in double checking everything, at least for some transactions. Using AI puts us at a great advantage because you can check things across your databases. You can check things across, like your inventory, procurement, and things like that we never could do before. So you could look for anomalies in transactions, almost real time. It's like wire transfers going out of an organization. It could be checking all those against, known problems with account numbers or duplicate invoices or purchase orders or any, or going to countries, to banks in countries that you don't normally do business with. So those types of technologies, I think, that are just amazing. I think you're going to be able to catch things faster. But as far as relying on AI to catch the video or the photo or something like that, everything I keep reading and all the presentations I've been, AI is not good at catching other AI. So I don't know that
AI is not good at catching another AI.
I think that's correct. It's like the programs they're not very good at being able to look at a photo and tell you that this is fake or this is real.
Right.
So once again, we go back to, well, it's going to have to be the human being.
Human factor.
And so AI, I think, is a really good tool in helping to find fraud. And how that works is going to be, I think, peculiar to each and unique to each particular company. But it's that idea of, we work with the 𝗂𝗀, the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations, to do the Fraud Risk Management Guide. A new edition came out a couple of years ago. On our website, if you just Google that, you go to ACFE.com and put in Fraud Risk Management Guide, there's a set of free tools. One, there's a list of data analysis tests. Now, you can use Excel to do that, but if you train your AI model, whatever you're using internally, you could do the same thing using AI. But you have to, there tests like just, doing vendor checks, cross-checking employee account numbers against vendor account numbers and addresses and things like that. So a lot of those.
May I ask you to put
basic,
a second, John?
Yeah.
If we may, that's a really fantastic resource. So can we please say that again? So it's ACFE.com and
go to the search bar and just put in Fraud Risk Management Guide.
A good link and good bridge to my next question, because you created the CFE review course nearly 2 decades ago, right? Now, human nature has not changed much, but AI is definitely reshaping how fraud is committed and investigated. So what new competencies are you now embedding to prepare the next generation of fraud examiners?
Well, we just went through a retooling of the topics on the exam, and we do talk about artificial intelligence, but we still keep it in the context of data analytics. It's
Uh-huh.
just a more efficient and larger way to do it. But the key goes back to, if you look at our materials on data analysis, the first step that we say in a data analytics program is, well, what are the schemes you're trying to catch? Especially if you stop and you look at the accounting system where most fraud occurs. People are trying to transfer money out of the organization. They're new ways to do it, but it's still the same process of trying to get someone to approve a payment to go out. Data analytics says, what are the schemes that you're trying to prevent, and then how do they occur, and then what are the points in this process that we are able to catch it? And that's what we're trying to focus on. Is like, don't get caught up in, you can't just go to ChatGPT and say, well, find fraud in this list of transactions, because it doesn't know, well, what do you mean by fraud? It's like you have to tell it, all right, here's a good transaction. Here are some ways that people can manipulate the system to create a bad transaction. And here are some of the indicators for what would happen as far as like the duplicate amounts or numbers, or the things coming on dates that they shouldn't. And you can train the AI model on all these things, like question anything that has these characteristics. AI is just allowing you to do that faster, more efficiently. And instead of looking at samples of transactions, now, if you do this correctly, you can look at all transactions. But it's still the basic idea of understanding what the schemes are, and working with your IT professionals and your AI model to explain why these things are fraud and what the characteristics are and what it should be looking for to help you pull out the transactions. But it's not going to replace anyone, because regardless of how many things it flags, it's not going to know whether it's fraud or not. That's going to always take a human being, because as we know, fraud depends on the intent of the person doing it. If you can put in a bad transaction and it can truly be an accident, but you can also put in a bad transaction and you had fraudulent intent. How are you going to know which one is which? Well, that's where the human being comes in, and that's where you conduct investigation to determine, well, did it happen one time? Has it happened multiple times? And if there does turn out to be fraud, then they can, what other schemes might they also be doing? That's something that ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot can't do. That's always going to take a human being.
Great, great. So you've spent 30 years shaping the anti-fraud movement. And when you think about impact and legacy, which is the name of my podcast and the main topic of what we want to leave our audience with, what do you hope your leadership and the ACFE's work will leave behind as a legacy for the next generation?
Well, I guess it goes back to education. And I was just last week, I was in Denver, Colorado, and I had several people come up and they say, I took your class back in 2018 or 2015, or it's years ago, and they said, I enjoyed it, thank you for doing it, and I'm still CFE, still fraud examiner. And so when I meet people who remember me and remember a class that I taught, that just really makes me feel good. It just really makes me feel good, because I'm like, well, hopefully they remembered something, or they took away something that helped them do their job better, that helped them be a better fraud fighter. And so for that, I'm just enormously grateful to have had the opportunity to, to talk to those people in the first place. And so really that's, I guess we're talking about impact and legacy. I'm just enormously happy about the fact that I was able to talk to so many people all over the world, all over these, all of these years, and at least I hope that a few people out there remembered something that I said and it helped them. And if that's true, then I'm really happy.
I'm sure many, many, many do that. I mean, the one message that keeps coming across, John, listening to you, and it's been a privilege actually to listen to you because I got to know you previously in a more professional environment, and now I get to talk to you more personally. What comes out strongly is your service, your passion and dedication for service, and that's very touching, actually.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, John. Well, John, as a tradition of my podcast, you get to ask me a question if you like.
Rania, let me ask you this question. The name of your, let me back up. Since the name of your podcast is Impact and Legacy, and you've been talking to people, and what is your definition of leadership within an organization? What are some of the tips that you have for people in making an impact and leaving a good legacy in their organization?
That's a beautiful question. Thank you, John. Well, leadership for me is really about making a positive difference. And obviously, the application of leadership might vary contextually from company environment to environment, whether we're talking about the world or an organization, large team, small team, culturally, where it is, and the situation, is the business thriving or is the business under pressure? So there are obviously contexts that vary, but there are underlying quality, a common denominator that would be the same. And for me, an impactful leader is one that makes a positive difference. And intelligence and integrity, which is very relevant to what we're talking about here in terms of setting the right values and the right tone, for the organization. It is someone who leads with the courage and authenticity and really, takes the risks but is true to who they are and true with other people as well. And that truthfulness and that core of authenticity and values. It is someone who's able to have a vision executed and create value, whether it be for the organization, the employees, the customers, the stakeholders, the shareholders, the community, whatever that, the world, whatever that is. And very importantly for me, it is about the human values, the ability to empathize, the emotional intelligence that enables them to build bridges and connect with people, to create that trust, because trust fuels influence, and influence is what gets to impact, and impact really is what creates a legacy in the long term. So it is someone who walks the walk and walks their talk. And it's someone who's consistent and who really looks after, inclusively the whole organization. So if we bring it back to what we're talking about here, integrity. So no favoritism, no nepotism, none of that. Although I'm sure, we all know there is a lot of that in the world, but that's real leadership for me. The one who sets a good vision for the whole, makes it happen for the whole, and takes and carries the people, includes the people, and considers the different parties to make something valuable. Create a great environment for the employees, great service and value for the clients, and create value for the investors, shareholders, and goodness for the community.
Very well said. I like that. I agree with you.
Thank you. So, final thoughts from you, John. The next generation of leaders, of fraud examiners, of whoever might be happening to listening to us, you've had a fantastic career path. You've done different roles across the world. And today, as you look back and reflect on your career and life lessons and, pearls of wisdom from you, a 30-second message to anyone currently listening to us today that they want to think about their future career impact and what legacy they're going to make, what would you say? You may want to favor CFEs if you like, but the message is for all.
I would just say keep your eyes and ears open, and do things that are outside your comfort zone sometimes. Amazingly, I never wanted to do public speaking. I had no desire to do that at all. I was happy to just sit at home, and I did not want to do it. I did not feel I was good at it. Jim Ratley, who was my boss, kept pushing me, and he said, "John, I think you would like this if you just got used to it and you got outside your comfort zone." And so he kind of pushed me a little bit, and eventually he was right. Now, it took a while. It was not overnight. I think the first couple of years I kept thinking, gosh, I am horrible at this. But I kept trying and I kept working, and I got better at it to the point where I really, really enjoyed it. So I would say that, first of all, for employees, if you're out there every day and there's something you think, I would like to do that, but I don't have the skills, then look for the skills. It could be anything. It could be, becoming a fraud examiner, but it could be public speaker or leadership. Look for volunteer opportunities, whether it's in the organization or outside for committees or community service to get that leadership experience. So even if it's a little outside your comfort zone, don't be afraid to push yourself a little bit. And then for people within the organization, the leaders, don't be afraid to push people a little bit out of their comfort zone, which if Jim hadn't done that for me, I would not be where I am today. So if you see a talent in someone and they seem hesitant, I think a good leader also is looking for talents within their people and trying to push them a little bit and challenge them to do a better job and to develop their skills.
That's wonderful. So do things outside your comfort zone, seek new skills and new experiences, learn if you are, the one aspiring to become a leader. And for leaders, push your employees beyond their comfort zones and, encourage them to step up.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. John, it's been a pleasure to have you on my podcast. I appreciate your time and valuable insights. Any parting comments?
No, I just want to, thank you, Rania, for, having me here. I enjoyed it. And, for everybody out there, thank you for the work you're doing, whatever capacity. And I'll always, be thinking about fraud in the background, and hope you at least consider becoming a fraud examiner.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for tuning in, and till next episode of Impact Legacy with Rania. If today's conversation resonated with you and you'd like to find out how I can support you and your team with advisory, mentoring, or training, and/or speaking at one of your events, please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. My contact details and those of John are in the show notes below. Thank you for tuning in. Until next episode of Impact Legacy with Rania. Thank you for tuning in to Impact Legacy with Rania. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe or follow so you never miss an episode, and click the bell to be notified of new releases. If this inspired you, please pass it on. Your likes, comments, and shares help us reach more people, because together we can grow this journey of influence, impact, and legacy.